Hello everyone. Today I would like to read you something, and if I butcher any of the names I do apologise in advance because it is a true account. I hope you enjoy it. He was a beautiful Arabian stallion, a golden bay with a flowing black mane and tail. Anyone could see that he was wild and irascible. I had heard from a friend that he was for sale, but as I watched the racing farm owner try to alter him, I was having second thoughts. The horse reared and plunged, snorting explosively. "He's just crazy because he's been abused," said the owner, wrestling with the halter. "He belonged to some drunk who used to ride him like a maniac. The man would hit him in the head with a hay rake if he didn't act right." The owner finally haltered the horse and held him. When I approached the bay, I noticed he was trembling. Only a colt. He must have had 4 very tough years. I talked to him quietly. When I tried to stroke him, he edged away. But his soft brown eyes regarded me intently, and the sound of my voice seemed to soothe him. "You and I have something in common, we do," I whispered. "Want to try him?" the owner asked. No. I did not want to ride him or make any demands on him. Not yet. I just knew that he had to come home with me, however I might manage it. Perhaps he could help me fill a void too. I was going through a separation after a long marriage. My family and friends were reassuring, but the pain still lingered no matter how much I prayed. As a psychotherapist, I had often counseled people who faced similar crises. I would urge them to find something to keep them occupied. And when I heard about the Arabian stallion for sale, I thought, wonder if I shouldn't follow my own advice. Animals had always been a part of my life, although I had not owned a horse for years. My friend's suggestion about seeing this particular stallion intrigued me. And for the first time in my life, well, in many months it seemed, I felt the anticipation of something truly positive. So I bought the horse, and I named him Haji, which means pilgrim in Arabic. I thought it was fitting, a fine-fitting name, for both of us were actually searching for peace. I put Haji in a pasture by himself. For more than a month he would not come within 100 yards of me, not even for food. If I tried to approach him, gently calling, "Haji," he dashed away. My only recourse was to sit in a corner of the pasture for a few hours every single day. Sometimes he would edge closer, but if I dared to move or glance up, he galloped off. As I sat reading, or working, or just doing a crossword puzzle under the pasture oaks, I could sense him staring at me. One day I was jolted from my reading by the thunder of approaching hoofs. I looked up to see Haji heading straight for me, at top speed, tail flagged, neck arched. But for some reason I felt no fear, only awe at his power and his grace. I stood up and remained still. Just 2 feet from me, he slid sideways to a screeching halt, then nudged my shoulder with his nose. For the first time, he allowed me to stroke his golden neck. I walked to the gate, and he stepped quietly beside me, then ate a treat from my hand. Now, even though Archie had permitted me to touch him, it was still a long time before I was able to groom him. This required trust on both our parts. I had no idea if he was going to hurt me, and he had no idea if I was going to beat him. But I kept thinking of the Bible verse, "Perfect love casts out fear." With Haji, I learned to give without any expectation of getting. I discovered what it was to love again. As the months progressed, we became inseparable. I was completely attached to him, and I could feel myself becoming stronger emotionally. One Sunday, a friend, who also owned a horse, suggested that we put our animals together in the same pasture. Haji was glad for the companion, and they began to frolic together. As we watched them play, suddenly there was a loud crack, and Haji was on the ground. The other horse had inadvertently kicked him. Haji struggled to his feet and limped toward me, dragging his right hind leg. I froze in horror. Broken legs can mean putting a horse down. Father, I prayed, please let Haji be all right. I hoped it would only be a sprain, but his hindquarters began to swell, and the veterinarian took x-rays. They revealed a severe fracture. The vet shook her head. I'm sorry, but you don't have much choice. At the thought of putting Haji down, I became distraught. I could not bear losing someone else I loved. Then the vet took my arm. You might think about sending him to the University Veterinary Centre. I've heard they do wonderful things in surgery there. She patted my shoulder. At least it's a chance. I took that chance, and I waited anxiously for word. After a week, the vet called. I'm sorry, said the university vet, but your horse's injury is inoperable. The hock is shattered, and there isn't any way we'd be able to piece all the bits of bone back together again. He went on to say that there was a 50-50 chance that if I took care of Haji, the break might heal. But, he cautioned, you'll probably never ride him. I put the phone down. I felt so sick. Friends tried to be kind and talked about doing the right thing. And even I had to admit that Haji did not deserve to be crippled for the rest of his life. But I put that possibility out of my mind and made arrangements to bring him back home. He limped stiff-legged in a cast that went all the way up to his hip as I led him down the trailer ramp. He had to be kept quiet in his stall for at least 8 weeks if there was to be any chance of healing. We could only allow him to walk a few feet to nibble some grass outside the barn. How on earth could I keep a horse so full of energy, sedentary, for 2 months? Would I end up with a crippled animal? All that night I talked to the Lord, crying out in anguish. Finally, as dawn came, a deep peace filled me. It seemed that God was telling me very strongly, Haji will be healed. I walked through the dewy grass to the stable that morning and announced to the horsekeepers that Haji was going to be all right. They stared at me incredulously. Yes, I said, God will heal Haji. Then I continued, and I will ride him, and I will train him. He will not be lame. Well, of course, there were some mutters and some shaking heads, some undertone tittering. But even I was surprised at myself. In my training as a behavioral psychologist, I had never believed in anything before the fact. I spent all my free time with Haji. I slept in his stall, curled up near his front legs, his head on my shoulder. Many times I held his head in my arms and I prayed. Through those weeks, he remained quiet, almost as if he understood what I was doing. Finally, after the 8th week, the vet came out to remove the cast, examine Haji, and take more x-rays. A small crowd of horse owners had gathered, all prepared to comfort me when the vet announced that Haji would never be sound. She removed the cast, carefully examined Haji's leg, and then trotted him up the middle aisle of the barn. At which point she stopped, halter in hand, turned round and shouted, He's laid all new bone." And there, before everyone, Haji strutted as if the accident had never happened. A cheer rose from the crowd. I took Haji out to the field and let him loose. Standing at the fence rail, I watched in amazement as the golden bay galloped and bucked, black mane and tail flying in the wind. Haji was free. Not only healed, but unimpaired, as the x-rays proved. Since then, I have ridden and trained this wonderful horse. At his very first horse show, he won 2 blue ribbons. As for me, my soul became renewed. I was able to get outside of myself and give my pain to the Lord. Haji and I were indeed pilgrims, and we found just what we were looking for.